Welcome to Plutus IAS. This is MURALI. So here in this topic, we'll discuss a very important topic, that is economic policies of British in India. So in this topic, we'll discuss the economic policies of British in India. See, basically, as we already know that the English East Indian Company was established in 1600 as a trading corporation, and then they went to India and started trading with India. So this is a general story, right? But here, talking about the period of this company, which right, or we can say the presence of British in India from 1600 to 1947, their economic policies were not uniform throughout this period. So, as per the need and requirement, and as per the opportunities that they got, they changed these economic policies, right? So, let us see them. So, we can divide the British economic policies in India into four phases. So, what are they? The first phase, that is from 1600 to 1757, that is almost initial 150 years. The second phase from 1757 to 1813. The third phase is from 1813 to 1858. And fourth phase is from 1858 to 1947. So these were the four phases of British economic policies in India. So we'll see each phase separately. First phase, that is 1600 to 1757. 1600 because the establishment of East Indian Company as a trading corporation. 1757, that is Battle of Plassey. Okay. So, in this phase, East Indian Company was established, right? And they secured, in this phase, what they did, they secured trade privileges from the King of England, King or Queen of England, and they also secured trade privileges from many Indian rulers. Like you can say Jahangir in 1615, who granted them permission to trade from Mughal India, and later they also secured some trade privileges from Golconda rulers, and they also secured trade privileges from most important privilege that secured from Farrukhsiyar, the Mughal emperor in 1717, right? So in this way, after establishment of this company, they secured many trade privileges from both English king or queen, and as well as, most importantly, Indian rulers, right? So in this spirit, they started trading with India. So in this phase, they brought metals to India, like bullion, gold, silver. They brought metals to India, and with using those metals, they purchased Indian goods and exported them back to Europe, and they made profit on that trade, right? So they established the company, they secured trade privileges from both England rulers and Indian rulers, and they started trading with India, and with the metals they brought to India, they purchased Indian goods and sold them back in Europe. So this is the major form of trade or economic policy of the company in India in this first phase. So in this phase we can say India was a net exporter. India was a net exporter. So let us say the second phase, that is 1757 to 1830. See what happened in this phase? In this phase, particularly 1757, that is Battle of Plassey, and later 1764 Battle of Buxar. So in these battles, after these battles, what happened to the British? They established control over Bengal, Bihar and Orissa. Particularly after Battle of Buxar, they established dual administration in Bengal, and that dual administration gave the Diwani rights and Nizamat rights to the company. That means, especially here Diwani rights means the right to collect revenue from Bengal, Bihar and Orissa. So when they got Diwani rights, so they started using, in fact we can say misusing this Bengal money for various other purposes. So what are they? They started using the Bengal money for purchase of Indian goods. They started using this money for administrative expenses of Madras and Bombay, right? And they forced the Indian merchants to sell at cheaper rates and purchase at costly, right? So with the control they had over this region, they started imposing trade restrictions. So these trade restrictions affected or started to affect India's trade and especially Indian merchants. So this begins the phase of exploitation. So this begins the phase of, so in the first phase they were only a purely trading body only, but here as a trading body they started ruling as well, especially started from Bengal, and they started exploitation, right? So this is the second phase. Coming to the third phase, that is from 1813 to 1858. Why 1813? 1813 is because end of monopoly rights. End of monopoly rights. So particularly monopoly rights, end of monopoly rights started in 1813 and completely ended in 1833. So what happened in this phase? In this phase, company is no longer a commercial body, it became a purely a political body. It purely became a political body. So as a political body, it started exploiting India. Started exploiting India. So how it exploited? It started exploiting India through various restrictive trade practices. So in the context of these restrictive trade practices, one most important thing was, that is one-way free trade. What is this one-way free trade? They increased the taxes on exports from India to England and they decreased the taxes on imports from England to India. So, understood? So, what is this one-way free trade? The taxes on exports from India to England increased and the taxes on imports from England to India decreased. So, obviously what will it result in? It will discourage the Indian exports and it will encourage the Indian imports. So Indian imports are coming from where? England. So here Indian exports declined, Indian imports increased. Simply through these one-way free trade or restrictive trade policies, the British converted India into supplier of raw materials and consumer of British finished goods, right? So this is the another restrictive policy. So coming to the last phase, the fourth phase, that is 1858 to 1947. So this phase is completely under Crown's rule, because in 1858 company rule was ended and Crown rule was started. So in this, through companies administrative and economic policies, through companies administrative and economic policies, Indian economy was completely destroyed. Once upon a time, like in the beginning of before 1600, India's share in the world trade was 24%. By the time of 1947, it was dropped less than 3%. So you can see the difference from 24%, it was dropped to 3%. So that was the extent to which the Indian economy was destroyed by English East Indian Company and later the British rule. So with this, by this time, India became net importer. In the first phase, we were net exporter. By the last phase, we became net importer. So that's why we can say these two phases were phases of mercantilism, and these two phases were called as phases of colonialism and financial imperialism, right? So these are the economic policies of British in India, so which we classified into four phases. So that is phases of mercantilism, phases of colonialism, and phases of imperialism. So in this way, the British company and as well as British crown have destroyed, or simply we can say British rule have destroyed Indian economy in the span of these 350 years of British rule in India, right? So this is the topic called the economic policies of British in India, right?